Okay, we're gonna make 1 bowl yellow cake. Yellow cake today. I have never made this. I saw this in the New York Times and I thought we're going to try it. The reverse of the chocolate cake we did with white frosting. We're going to do yellow cake with chocolate frosting. So I'm following the directions and learning like you. As before, 3 eggs, room temperature, really important. I also have 1/4 cup of butter that was melted, and I poured 1/2 cup of tasteless vegetable oil on top of that, 1 cup of buttermilk that's also room temperature, 1.25 cups of sugar, and 250 grams of flour. This is a different way of measuring flour. This is the coolest thing ever. You set the weight and it zeroes out for whatever you put on it, and then you can put 250 grams or whatever it is. It's also 2 cups if you don't want to do that. And then baking powder, baking soda, salt. So the first thing to do, and I also have cake pans that have been greased and floured like we did before in the chocolate video. I think these videos are going to have to go together. So the first thing is the 3 eggs and the sugar. And then the directions say whisk it like crazy for a minute. So that's what I'm going to do, and you will notice that I have a long sleeve shirt on because I learned from Rachel Ray that you should never whisk in public with a sleeveless shirt on, because no matter what you do and how strong you are, these muscles under here are just going to go rolling around. So we're not going to look at that. So we're going to all right, that was a minute, and the recipe says 1 energetic bicep tingling minute. So that's what we did. Then goes in the oil and the butter. And the buttermilk. I'm just going to stir that a little bit before I put the buttermilk in. And then it says flavorings. And then, most unhelpfully, she says, oh, you can do whatever you want. You can do citrus or vanilla and almond. So we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. Because a good yellow cake, I think, has good vanilla flavor. 1.5 teaspoons. And then 1/2 teaspoon each. Now I've got my teaspoon all wet. Salt and baking soda. Baking soda. 1/2 teaspoon salt, which I am not going to pour over the bowl in case I miss. And 2 teaspoons baking powder. It's always a good thing not to mix these 2 things up. And then 2 cups of flour. I used cake flour, but you can use all-purpose flour. The only way that they're different is that cake flour is a lighter flour. It has less gluten in it, so the cake will have a slightly more tender crumb. But if all-purpose flour is what you have, that is definitely the thing to use. And I'm going to avoid whisking it more than I have to, because that activates the gluten. I'm just waiting for the white spots and a little bit of the lumpiness to go away. All right. Try to get it evenly in the pans. Which you can measure the depth with a toothpick, if it's hard to tell, or if you have one of these little scales, you can weigh the pans. All right, so in 4 minutes when our dinner comes out of the oven, this will go in, and then after we eat dinner, we'll make frosting.
Cat is keeping a very close eye on the empty bird feeder out there. Very protective.
All right, we're gonna put these in the oven. We're gonna offset them on the rack so they get good air circulation. Leave it in the oven for half an hour. All right, it's golden brown. It springs back when I touch it, and it's done, but I'm gonna double check it. With a toothpick. It comes out clean. So we're gonna let them cool, and then we're gonna come back and make frosting. All right, now we're gonna do the frosting, and we're gonna get serious here with the frosting. Last time we kind of cheated. We did an easy one, and we frosted really simply. We're gonna go the whole 9 yards. Still a simple frosting, still easy to make. We haven't graduated to a real buttercream yet. A pound of confectioner's sugar, 3 ounces of cream cheese, half a cup of butter, a dash of salt, half a teaspoon of vanilla, and 2 ounces of chocolate that's been melted and cooled. Again, good chocolate. This is a different brand, but it's also good chocolate. So we're gonna start by putting cream cheese and the butter, a dash of salt. A dash is like less than a quarter of a teaspoon. That's kind of a big dash, but with chocolate and cream cheese in there, that's perfect. Half a teaspoon of vanilla. Almost always there's vanilla in there with chocolate. All right, and we're gonna use the beater here. So if you have one of these, this is great. You can do it with the hand mixer like I did last time. This will make it really easy. Except if you can't get it together. There. Everything was at room temperature. You want to beat it till it's light and fluffy. And I would say it's lighter, but I wouldn't call it fluffy yet. All right, now we're going to add all the chocolate. It's really tempting to lick this bowl, but don't do it because it's unsweetened chocolate and you'll regret it. And a tablespoon of milk. I'm using half and half because I like the texture better. It's just got a little more fat in it. And with the kind of mixer I have to scrape a lot. Truth is, it doesn't matter that much what order you mix these things in. This kind of frosting is not really a careful chemistry. It's just fat and sugar. All right, here we go with the sugar. I'm just going to dump it all in. I think it's going to need up to another tablespoon or so of half and half, but we'll go slowly and see. I'm putting about a half of a tablespoon in here. It's hard to take it back if you add too much. Well, that definitely needs more liquid. This is kind of light colored because of the cream cheese. I don't want to leave any on the beater because I want it all for the cake, but the truth is it'll get licked clean. And I'm gonna mix the last bits in this way. So it looks like I've got little bits of chocolate in there that didn't totally melt, or they got too cool. But they're small enough that they won't affect the taste. They'll just give it a little texture. All right, we're gonna do the real deal here. This is an icing offset spatula. It's what you're supposed to use. I do better with this. This is a professional baking tool that's just made so that you can turn it while you're frosting it. You can do it just without this, but this makes it easier. I'm just going to put a little dab of icing under that so that it'll stick. And then I'm going to put one cake round right on top of it. And it should be just a tiny bit bigger than the cardboard, should be a tiny bit bigger than the cake. Alright, so now I'm going to slap, we're going to call this chocolate chip icing. Okay. Kind of like what we did with the white icing. You want to push it around to the edges. This on top. Now here's the secret. I'm going to dump a bunch of this on top. But then I'm going to do what's called a crumb coat, which means I'm going to put a really thin coat around the side. It's not supposed to be pretty. It's just supposed to seal in all the crumbs. Just put that back so it doesn't get cold. Don't need to do it on the top because the top is pretty well sealed, but because I have that frosting there, I'm just going to do that. And then we're going to put it in the refrigerator to cool. But my refrigerator is full and it's cool outside tonight. So it's going to go out on the porch for a few minutes. That's good. Okay, 10 minutes or so. The colder it is, the less time that takes. But the idea is that it becomes essentially a dry surface. So now I can drag icing across it without bringing crumbs up from the cake. So you can see the chocolate flecks in it. I learned from Rachel Ray about whisking, and I learned from Julia Child not to make apologies for things that don't go well. She did an episode. Julia Child was a famous French TV French chef in the 60s and 70s. And she did a show where she made English muffins and she burned them. And she said, never acknowledge your mistakes, just keep going and nobody will notice. So
you
icing
acknowledged them.
Yes, this icing is supposed to have chocolate flakes in it. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pile up most of the icing right on top. I'm going to leave myself a little back here in case I back myself into a corner. And then I'm going to take it down bit by bit down the sides. And you're aiming for sort of a 1/4 of an inch, the width between the bottom of the cake and the cardboard if you have it. If you don't have a cardboard, it's no issue. You just do it on a plate. You can put wax paper underneath the edges to make it neat if you want. I'm just going to work on getting it there, and then later I'm going to clean it up. It's not that hard. And when you're done, you can make it look smooth and neat, or you can give it some waves. Or if you have a cake comb, you can give it some horizontal lines. Now I'm going to try to get it down onto the cardboard to cover that up. I'm holding my knife as straight up and down as I can. It's especially helpful if you have cake pans that have a straight side instead of a slanted side. The slanted side is to make it easier to get it out of the pan, but it does make it harder to make a nice straight-sided cake. And I'm letting it come up over the edge because that'll make it a little easier to make everything meet the other end. If you want to make a totally flat cake, you can take a long serrated knife and cut off the dome top, but I always hate to leave some cake behind. All right, now I'm going to do one last thing. I'm going to heat this up. Just with hot water. If you want to keep doing this a bunch of times, you can stick it in a big tall glass. Dry it off. And again, if you don't have a little Lazy Susan-like thing, you can just spin your plate on the table, on the counter. I'm going to do it again for the top. Next time, if we get more serious about icing, we'll do a real buttercream and we'll do some easy rosettes. Well, there you go. Chocolate cream cheese icing with chocolate flecks. And then you can just pick it up. Put it on a plate. Let me go get a plate. There. Serrated edge is good. I have to say, this cake actually smells a little bit like cake mix cake. So I hope it tastes better than that. Got to get under the cardboard there. I mean, over the cardboard. Look at that. That looks pretty good.
Cheers.
Cheers. I think you have to get a good look at the crumb of this cake. How's it taste?
Really good. Better than a cake mix.
That came out amazingly well for a cake with a mixing method as simple as that. It's facing me. I turn it around.